Breaking news. In a live broadcast that stunned millions, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, delivered a pledge that has left the monarchy at a crossroads. Her words carried the weight of centuries, and her presence shifted the spotlight in a way no one expected. Welcome to our channel, and thank you for joining us for this special report. Before we continue, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, so you won't miss the latest updates as this historic story unfolds. It happened inside Westminster Abbey, the stage of countless royal ceremonies. But this time, there was no coronation, no rehearsed ritual. Catherine stood before the world, her voice steady, speaking not of crowns or titles, but of duty, service, and the future of the nation. The cameras caught every detail, and right beside her, Queen Camilla's face turned pale, a silent reaction, impossible to hide, that told its own story. From early morning, millions across the United Kingdom and around the world had tuned in. Streets were unusually quiet, pubs hushed, homes filled with the glow of television screens. Everyone expected tradition. Few expected history to break its own script. Anchors lowered their voices, speaking with reverence. Families exchanged wide-eyed glances. A grandmother whispered to her granddaughter that she would never forget this day. Catherine stepped forward without notes, her words calm but commanding. "I stand here today not as a sovereign, but as a servant. As a wife, as a mother, and as a member of this family, I pledge to honor the duty entrusted to us, not for the crown alone, but for the people of this nation and the generations to come." Her declaration was not about power, but about responsibility. Not about claiming the throne, but about embodying the future. The weight of her message carried beyond the Abbey walls, resonating across cities, villages, and distant nations. Yet it was not only Catherine's speech that defined this broadcast, it was the reactions. And no reaction was more unforgettable than Camilla's. The Queen Consort, seated just steps away, froze under the unforgiving glare of the cameras, her face drained of color, her silence louder than the princess's vow. Viewers leaned closer to their screens, whispering to one another. What does this mean? The moment began as a ceremony of tradition, but in a single heartbeat, it transformed into a drama of raw human emotion. And this is only the beginning. Stay with us as we reveal what unfolded inside the studio, how the world reacted, and why Catherine's words could redefine the monarchy itself. The moment Catherine's words left her lips, the atmosphere inside the studio changed in a way no script, no schedule, and no royal handbook could have predicted. At first, there was silence, an almost sacred pause, where sound seemed to vanish, and every breath was suspended. The declaration had carried such weight that it was as if time itself faltered for a heartbeat. Then, like ripples spreading across a still pond, the reactions began. The cameras kept rolling, capturing not only Catherine's steady expression but also the stunned faces of those around her. Broadcasters who had spent decades covering royal affairs suddenly found themselves speechless. One veteran anchor blinked twice, her carefully prepared notes now useless in the face of something no one had expected. She glanced at her co-host, who stared wide-eyed at the scene, unable to find his words. In living rooms across the nation, people gasped. In one home, a mother dropped her teacup, the porcelain clattering against the table as she turned up the volume. In pubs, the usual hum of laughter and chatter dissolved into silence. Patrons leaned closer to the glowing screens, afraid to miss a single word. Even in faraway countries, where the monarchy was often seen as distant or ceremonial, Catherine's pledge held a magnetic pull. It was not just what she said, but how she said it, unscripted, unguarded, carrying both dignity and vulnerability. Viewers felt as though they were watching history not through textbooks or documentaries, but unfolding in real time. Inside the control rooms, chaos erupted. Producers scrambled behind the scenes, whispering urgently into headsets. Directors barked orders to camera operators. Stay on Catherine. No. Cut to Camilla. Get the reaction. Hold it there. Every flicker of expression, every gesture, every strained silence became part of the story. And then, the moment that would define the broadcast, the camera turned to Queen Camilla. There she was, seated with all the grace expected of her station, yet unable to conceal the turmoil rising within. For a brief instant, the world saw not the polished mask of royal composure, but a woman caught completely off guard. Her face drained of color, her lips tightened, her hand gripped the armrest with visible tension. Viewers at home leaned forward. A grandmother gasped and clutched her chest. A young girl whispered to her mother, "Why does the queen look so pale?" Camilla had spent decades learning to mask her emotions in public. She had endured scrutiny, criticism, and suspicion, all under the relentless glare of cameras. But in that unguarded moment, the mask slipped. The silence surrounding her became louder than any speech. Analysts later described her reaction as a turning point. Some argued it revealed fear, the fear of being overshadowed by Catherine's rising influence. Others saw disbelief, a realization that the ground beneath her had shifted. Whatever it was, the moment seared itself into public memory. Social media erupted instantly. Hashtags bearing Catherine's name trended worldwide within minutes. Clips of Camilla's pale face spread across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, replayed again and again, analyzed frame by frame. One headline read, "The Princess Speaks, the Queen Falls Silent." Another simply declared, "History caught on camera." Even seasoned royal correspondents admitted they had never seen anything like it. One anchor, still visibly shaken during a post-broadcast panel, confessed, "I've covered the monarchy for 30 years, but today was different." This wasn't ceremony. This was revelation. Public reaction reflected the divide. Some praised Catherine's composure, calling her the queen the nation has been waiting for. Others questioned what her words meant for Charles and Camilla, wondering if a subtle shift of power had just taken place in front of their eyes. Inside the studio, the tension was palpable. Reporters exchanged nervous glances. Commentators scrambled to interpret the meaning. Behind the cameras, producers whispered about how to frame the story for the evening bulletins. Should they focus on Catherine's powerful words or on Camilla's unsettling reaction? Both had become inseparable parts of the same historic broadcast. For Camilla, every second felt like an eternity. She had fought for decades to carve out a place in the royal family, weathering storms of public skepticism. And yet, in a matter of moments, the narrative shifted away from her entirely. The cameras that once framed her as queen consort now exposed a vulnerability she could not hide. Observers noted the contrast, Catherine speaking with calm authority, and Camilla caught in silent turmoil. Two women, side by side, yet representing two very different futures for the monarchy. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. Catherine, young, poised, and relatable, was embraced as a voice of continuity and renewal. Camilla, older, often met with suspicion, seemed diminished in that instant, her silence interpreted as weakness. Experts later explained why the image resonated so strongly. "We're used to royal speeches being about ritual," one historian remarked. But this was not ritual. This was raw humanity. Catherine gave a promise. Camilla gave us her silence. And in that silence, the monarchy revealed its fracture. The shockwave did not stop with the cameras. Across Britain and the Commonwealth, debates erupted. Was Catherine stepping into a role that overshadowed her husband, William, and even King Charles himself? Was this a glimpse of the monarchy's future, shaped more by the Princess of Wales than by the reigning monarch or his consort? Behind closed doors, insiders admitted the palace had not anticipated the scale of the reaction. What began as a pledge of service had become a turning point, raising questions about loyalty, succession, and public trust. The images from that broadcast would not fade. They would be replayed in living rooms, dissected in newsrooms, and studied by historians for years to come. Not for grandeur, but for raw honesty. For Catherine, it was the moment she became more than the Princess of Wales. For Camilla, it was the moment her silence became louder than any crown. But this story was far from over. Because if Catherine's words redefined the present, then the rivalries they exposed would shape the future. And within the palace walls, where alliances are forged and broken in whispers, the real drama was only just beginning. Beneath the polished surface of crowns and ceremonies lies a reality rarely spoken aloud. A world where glances speak louder than proclamations, and silence carries the weight of dynasties. The monarchy is built on tradition, but within its walls, rivalries simmer quietly, shaping decisions, influencing alliances, and sometimes tearing families apart. Catherine's pledge, while celebrated openly, stirred currents of tension that had long remained hidden from public view. It was not only her words that carried power, it was the unspoken implications that rippled through those seated beside her. For King Charles, whose reign had already been marked by controversy, the sight of his daughter-in-law stepping forward with such confidence carried mixed emotions. Some insiders reported a flicker of pride, but others detected unease. Catherine's composure highlighted the very contrast that had haunted Charles throughout his time on the throne. His struggle to unite the public behind him, compared with Catherine's effortless ability to inspire loyalty. Camilla, meanwhile, could not have missed the shift. She had spent decades battling public skepticism, slowly building her place beside Charles. Her journey into acceptance had been long and fraught. Yet, in a matter of moments, Catherine had taken center stage, eclipsing her without a crown, without ceremony, with nothing more than a promise. Analysts noted the symbolism immediately. This was a transfer of moral authority. one royal commentator explained. It doesn't matter that Charles is king or that Camilla is queen consort. At that moment, the public saw Catherine as the figure who embodies the future. And once that perception takes root, it's very difficult to reverse. The rivalries did not stop there. Courtiers who had long pledged loyalty to Charles and Camilla now found themselves re-evaluating. Some shifted subtly toward Catherine and William, sensing where the tide of public opinion was heading. Others clung to the established order, wary of being swept away by change. Behind closed doors, advisors whispered in hushed tones. Strategies were drafted, talking points prepared, contingency plans drawn. How would the palace frame the broadcast? Would Catherine's pledge be emphasized as unity, or minimized to avoid overshadowing the king? Even within the wider royal circle, lines were being redrawn. Princess Anne, known for her discipline and loyalty to tradition, reportedly viewed Catherine's role with cautious respect. She had long served as one of the monarchy's most reliable figures, but even she understood the necessity of adaptation. Catherine's moment might not have been planned, but it carried the weight of inevitability. Public perception only amplified the rivalries. Polls taken in the days after the broadcast showed a surge in support for Catherine, while Camilla's approval ratings dipped sharply. Headlines paired their images side by side. Catherine radiant, Camilla shaken. The comparison was inescapable. Social media, too, played its part. Memes and commentary painted Catherine as the people's queen, echoing the words once used for Diana. For Camilla, this was more than an image problem. It was a reminder that history, and the public's memory, could not be controlled. The rivalries were not declared openly, but their presence was undeniable. For every smile at official functions, for every polite nod in public, there were whispered doubts behind palace doors. Would Catherine's rise destabilize Camilla's role? Could Charles withstand being overshadowed by his daughter-in-law? And what did this mean for the long-term balance of power within the family? Experts reminded viewers that such tensions were nothing new. Throughout history, the monarchy has been shaped not only by crowns and ceremonies, but by rivalries within its own walls. Brothers against brothers, consorts against heirs, advisors against advisors. The difference in this modern moment was that the rivalries were no longer hidden. They were broadcast in real time, replayed on millions of screens, dissected by commentators, and immortalized in the pale expression of a queen consort. For Catherine, the rivalry was less a choice and more a burden. Her rise was not a calculated grab for influence, but the natural outcome of her composure and connection with the public. Yet, the consequences were unavoidable. By stepping forward, she had forced a contrast that would define the monarchy's image for years to come. For Camilla, the moment was devastating. She had fought so hard to be accepted, only to be eclipsed by someone younger, more admired, and more naturally embraced. Her pale face on that broadcast was not just a fleeting reaction. It was the reflection of decades of struggle, suddenly threatened by a single speech. And for Charles, the rivalry struck at the heart of his reign. How could a king command authority when his daughter-in-law had become the monarchy's most trusted voice? How could he ensure stability when the public already looked past him toward the future? The unseen rivalries now stood exposed. Not through confrontation, but through contrast. Not through rebellion, but through revelation. This was no longer just a matter of family dynamics. It was a question of legacy. Who would carry the monarchy forward? Who would embody its values in a world that demanded authenticity? And who would be left behind as history turned its page? The answers were not yet clear. But one truth was undeniable. Catherine's words had not only stirred admiration, they had awakened rivalries that could shape the destiny of the crown itself. And while the cameras moved on, the tensions they revealed would linger in every corridor of the palace. The world had seen the pledge, the pale reaction, and the contrast between two women at the heart of the monarchy. But beyond the rivalries, another question was rising, one that reached far deeper than personalities. Because behind every royal gesture lies the shadow of succession. And in the line of succession, perception is as powerful as blood. The crown is more than a piece of jeweled metal. It is a symbol of continuity, a thread binding centuries of history, passed from monarch to monarch through the line of succession. From the earliest kings who ruled with swords and decrees, to modern sovereigns who reign with ceremony and diplomacy, succession has always been both a promise and a burden. To understand the weight of Catherine's words, one must first understand the tapestry of succession that weaves her into the story of Britain's monarchy. By law, Catherine does not stand in the direct line to the throne. That place belongs to her husband, Prince William, and eventually their eldest son, Prince George. Yet Catherine's role is anything but secondary. As the Princess of Wales, she is the public face of continuity. She is the bridge between the reigning monarch and the future king. and when she spoke at Westminster Abbey, her pledge resonated with the authority of that position. History shows that succession is never just about bloodlines. It is also about perception. When a monarch ascends, legitimacy comes not only from heritage, but from the acceptance of the people. Without public trust, even the rightful heir stands on fragile ground. Analysts reminded viewers of past crises in succession. The abdication of Edward VIII in 1936, driven by personal choice, but shaped by public opinion. The turbulent years following Princess Diana's death, when the monarchy faced unprecedented scrutiny. Each moment proved that the line of succession, while written in law, is lived in the hearts of the people. Catherine's rise in public esteem has been building for years. From her early days as William's partner, through her marriage, motherhood, and public service, she has cultivated an image of stability and relatability. She is seen as modern, yet respectful of tradition. She represents both continuity and change. And for many, she embodies the monarchy's survival in a rapidly evolving world. Her words at the Abbey transformed that perception into reality. "I stand here today not as a sovereign, but as a servant," she said. And with that, she positioned herself not as a rival to Charles or Camilla, but as the living embodiment of succession, a voice for the future generation, speaking in the present tense. The public understood the symbolism instantly. Polls taken days after the broadcast revealed a striking trend. While support for Charles remained lukewarm, approval for William and Catherine surged. More than half of those surveyed said they saw Catherine as the figure most capable of securing the monarchy's relevance in the 21st century. This was not an accident. For years, William and Catherine have carefully shaped their public image, balancing royal duty with relatable humanity. They have been photographed on school runs, cheered at sporting events, praised for their charity work. Every appearance has been part of a quiet but steady campaign to present themselves as the future the monarchy needs. By contrast, Charles and Camilla have struggled with public opinion. Their marriage, long shadowed by the ghost of Diana, has never fully captured the nation's affection. And in the stark contrast of Catherine's poise and Camilla's pale reaction, the difference became undeniable. The line of succession is more than a list of names, one historian observed. It is a chain of perception. Catherine has become the strongest link in that chain. She is not the heir by law, but she is the heir in the hearts of the people. For the monarchy, this presents both an opportunity and a risk. On one hand, Catherine's popularity strengthens the institution's claim to continuity. On the other, it exposes the fragility of the reigning monarch's authority. If the public already looks to Catherine as the future, what does that mean for Charles and Camilla in the present? The question extends beyond Britain. Across the Commonwealth, Catherine's image has proven more unifying than that of Charles or Camilla. In Canada, commentators praised her as the face of a modern monarchy. In Australia, her presence reignited debates over republicanism, yet even critics admitted her popularity complicates calls for change. In African and Caribbean nations, where ties to the crown are increasingly questioned, Catherine is viewed as a softer, more approachable representative of an institution struggling to adapt. And then there is Diana. Though she is no longer here, her shadow remains. Many observers noted the striking parallels between Diana's public warmth and Catherine's composed sincerity. The echo of Diana's legacy deepens Catherine's impact, while intensifying the contrast with Camilla. It is here that succession becomes not only legal, but emotional. The people see in Catherine what they once saw in Diana, a bridge between monarchy and humanity. And that perception, though intangible, carries enormous weight. Within the palace, advisors know this all too well. Some whisper that Catherine's role must be carefully managed to prevent overshadowing the king. Others argue that her prominence is the monarchy's greatest asset in navigating turbulent time. The balance is delicate, and every public appearance tilts the scales. The broadcast at Westminster Abbey was not a coronation, but it was a coronation of sorts in the public mind. Catherine's words crowned her with trust, with expectation, with the hopes of millions who saw in her the promise of continuity. And that raises the most critical question of all. What happens when perception outpaces reality? When the future arrives in the present, long before the crown has changed hands? The line of succession may be fixed in law, but in the eyes of the people, it is Catherine who now stands at its center. And as history has shown, perception can be just as powerful as tradition. The monarchy has weathered wars, abdications, scandals, and reforms. But today, it faces a different kind of challenge, not from rivals outside the family, but from the very image of its future. Because succession is no longer just about who wears the crown, it is about who carries the people with them. And in that measure, Catherine has already taken a step that no title can bestow. The reverberations of Catherine's pledge did not stop at Westminster Abbey. They spread outward, across Britain, across the Commonwealth, and into newsrooms and living rooms around the world. In the United Kingdom, disbelief mingled with awe. Some clapped spontaneously in their homes. Others wiped away quiet tears. A few sat frozen, struggling to process the gravity of what they had just seen. For many, it was less a speech and more a moment of national reckoning. The very next morning, newspapers captured the scene in bold headlines. One tabloid declared, "The People's Queen speaks." Another splashed across its front page a stark comparison. Catherine delivering her pledge on one side, Camilla pale and silent on the other. A broadsheet ran with the headline, "A Future Crown, a Present Question." Television networks replayed the footage endlessly. BBC anchors spoke with a tone of reverence. Sky News panels debated whether Catherine's pledge marked a shift in the balance of royal influence. In pubs, the video looped on big screens, drawing murmurs, applause, and fiery debate. Beyond Britain, the reaction was just as intense. In the United States, morning shows opened with the footage, calling it a moment of history caught live. CNN noted the unexpected vulnerability of Camilla's expression. Fox News emphasized Catherine's words as a symbol of stability. Social media influencers dissected the broadcast in real time, reaching audiences far beyond traditional royal watchers. In France, newspapers described the moment as le tournant, a turning point. Commentators marveled at how a single speech could outshine decades of ceremony. In Germany, coverage focused on the contrast between the two royal women, calling it the new face versus the fading crown. Across the Commonwealth, the debate was sharper. In Canada, panelists praised Catherine as the future of a monarchy that must evolve. In Australia, the broadcast reignited discussions about republicanism, with opposing voices seizing on the moment to argue their case. One columnist wrote, "If Catherine is the monarchy's strongest card, what does that say about its current leadership?" In the Caribbean, where calls for independence from the crown have grown louder, reactions were mixed. Some saw Catherine's words as a welcome gesture of service and humility. Others dismissed the speech as too little, too late, a modern face on an outdated institution. But no matter the interpretation, the fascination was undeniable. Catherine's pledge had transcended borders, turning into a global conversation about monarchy, tradition, and change. On social media, the moment exploded. Hashtags like #CatherinePledge, #FutureQueen, and #CamillaSilent trended worldwide within hours. Clips of Catherine's steady voice went viral, juxtaposed with slow-motion replays of Camilla's pale face. Memes spread rapidly, Catherine portrayed as the torchbearer of tradition, Camilla as the symbol of a faltering past. For younger generations, who consume royal news through Instagram reels and TikTok clips rather than newspapers, the broadcast became a shared cultural moment. Students posted reaction videos. Teachers paused lessons to replay the clip, explaining that their pupils were witnessing living history. Taxi drivers debated the implications with passengers. Shopkeepers spoke of little else with customers. Families argued at dinner tables, was Catherine overstepping, or was she filling a void that others had left behind? The contrast between Catherine's words and Camilla's silence became the defining narrative. It wasn't just about what was said, it was about what was seen. One royal analyst put it plainly, the monarchy didn't just speak, it revealed itself. And while Catherine's image soared, the challenges for the institution grew. Critics questioned what the moment meant for King Charles. If the public already looked to Catherine as the steady hand of the monarchy, where did that leave him? Was the monarchy at risk of being pulled into two directions, the present reign and the future reign, colliding in real time? Global headlines reflected these tensions. The New York Times wrote, "Catherine steps forward, Camilla fades." The Sydney Morning Herald declared, "The princess speaks for the future." The Guardian posed the question, who leads the monarchy now? For ordinary people, though, the reaction was simpler. Catherine's words resonated. Camilla's reaction unsettled. The monarchy, often seen as distant and untouchable, suddenly felt human, vulnerable, exposed, at a crossroads. And behind closed doors, insiders knew the truth. The broadcast was more than a moment. It was a shift, not a formal transfer of power, but a symbolic one. Not written into law, but etched into perception. The monarchy had shown the world two faces, one of calm promise, the other of pale silence. And the world was watching, choosing which one to believe in. As debates raged across continents, one question grew louder. Could Catherine's pledge secure the crown's future, or had it exposed the fragility of the present? The cameras captured the promise. The headlines amplified it. But what happened when the lights went out, when the doors of the palace closed, and the family was left alone to reckon with the fallout. That story remained hidden from public view. Until now, when the cameras stopped rolling and the applause faded, history did not end. It simply moved behind closed doors. Inside the ancient walls of the palace, where portraits of past monarchs seemed to watch in silence, the royal family faced the reality of what Catherine's words had set in motion. Advisors moved quickly. Statements were drafted, strategy debated. Should the palace frame Catherine's pledge as unity, or risk admitting it had shifted the balance of power? Courtiers whispered in corridors, weighing loyalty against opportunity, watching carefully to see which way the winds of influence would blow. For King Charles, the evening was bittersweet. Pride in Catherine's strength mingled with the quiet recognition that her popularity eclipsed his own. His reign, already fragile, seemed to shrink in her shadow. For Camilla, the silence was heavier still. Her pale reaction, replayed endlessly on screens around the world, had become the symbol of vulnerability she had spent decades trying to escape. And for Catherine, there was no crown, no title gained, only expectation. Her words had transformed her into the face of continuity, the voice of a future that millions already believed in. But with admiration came pressure. Every gesture would now be measured against the promise she had made. Historians may debate the meaning of this day for decades. Was it the moment the monarchy found renewal, or the moment it revealed its fracture? Did Catherine's pledge secure the crown's survival, or expose how fragile the institution has become? What is certain is this: the monarchy stands at a crossroads, between tradition and change, between the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future, between the calm promise of one princess and the pale silence of a queen consort. The story of the crown has never been just about ceremonies and crowns. It has always been about people, their words, their choices, their reactions. And on this day, Catherine spoke. Camilla faltered, and the world took notice. Thank you for watching this special report. What do you think Catherine's pledge means for the future of the monarchy? Will her words shape a new chapter, or deepen the cracks within the royal household? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And before you go, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest updates. The story of the crown is far from over, and we'll be here to bring you every twist, every revelation, and every moment that defines history.